Okay, I've pretty much figured out what went wrong and why. Notice the motor quits turning when this ESC is messed with. So let's see if we can figure out what part of the ESC has problems. This is the control end where the two wires come in. Doesn't seem to be there. It's definitely there someplace, not here in the connectors. There we go. Getting pretty obvious. I don't know if I made a mistake putting that tie wrap where I put it, but I can tell you I never put another tie wrap there. I troubleshot it down to this one wire. Somehow it's loose and intermittent on the inside. I'm going to open that up and see if it's poor solder. The lights that went out simply broke the connector. That's just straight up simple. Okay, let's look at the event. I have it completely now after I was able to recover the platform. Telemetry only gave me what happened till about this point because the platform was moving so fast when this happened. So what I'm going to do real quick here, I'm going to knock these down. So you have to be in stabilized mode to take off. It won't arm in anything but stabilized mode. So I frequently just put it in stabilized and pop it up. It's best to pop it up kind of quick. That way you avoid one part lifting up, dragging the ground, touching a prop. Just popping it up about 3 feet works really good on a lot of verticals. Also gets it out of the ground turbulence that could cause problems and cause the gyros to start overreacting to what's going on. So then I put it in altitude hold. Must have had the throttle low, which is a common problem for me. And it came back down to the ground and kinda, you can see, it actually piddle around. So I put it back in stabilized mode and pulled it back up into the air. See if I can adjust this a little. Now, in stabilized mode, it went kind of crazy on me. This doesn't quite show it. This just shows my stabilized flight as best I could do with it at the time. But a lot more will become clear here in a second. So I put it in stabilized, brought it up. From this point on, it kind of had a mind of its own. Went screaming to here, which was not what I was trying to make it do. I was trying to just hover it. So I just said screw this and flipped the return to launch, which did not return to launch. Also for the same reason as ultimately I found out that ESC on one of the arms was not working correctly. So let's back that stuff out just a little bit and let's look at some of the other things that went on. Now I could pop these up one at a time and show you what the telemetry says about, oops, this. I don't know if that's actually my carb. This does not have anything to do with it might have been configured as an airplane. It was not. I've checked that over inside the autopilot since I physically got the autopilot back. But this does show the plane of the platform as in geometric plane, orientation type plane, not airplane. Google just happens to use an airplane. Actually, you can come in and you can change what it uses. I'm not going to go through all that stuff. So basically you can see here as I popped it up, as I clicked each little new mark here, as I popped it up in stabilized mode, I wished I could figure out how to automate this. I can in Drone Share. And it's coming up off the ground. No problems, but then in stabilized mode, it starts to roll over. I am not telling it to do that at that moment. That's when the ESC decided to quit spinning one of the motors. So it basically did a real quick flip on me right there, which it's not supposed to do, which kind of flipped me out, especially so close to me. And it does it so quick. First time I'd had 12-inch props on it. And believe me, I think it does about 60. I probably will actually change my mind and put it back together with different ESCs and still fly it. Not sure. I have to continue troubleshooting. So I then, if you remember, put it in altitude hold, which because the stick was low, caused it to come back down towards the ground. Well, I can click these much quicker. Anybody who knows how to make this automate or anything, please, by all means, maybe I'll actually study. And this is where it doesn't show it being on the ground, but this is where it was kind of skidding towards the ground. So I put it back in stabilized mode and up the throttle. So up it goes. Oops. Up it goes. Doing exactly as I like. Let me get a few more of these. Oops. It moves a long way on one click of the mouse. And it starts to turn here, which again I didn't tell it to do. I was just trying to hover it. So that bothered me. Started moving away, which I was just trying to get a hover. And I like to get a high hover because that gives me more time to react should it be closer to ground, less reaction time you have. That's pretty obvious. Now here it is turning again on its own, and lo and behold, here it begins another flip on its own. The flips just totally shocked the daylights out of me when they happened. Now I know why they happened. Because the ESC was intermittent. Now I'm just going to go back up here and ask it to put in all of these so we can see what actually happened. Came up in stabilized mode. It did a flip on me. I flipped it into altitude hold to try to help me. And because the throttle was low, it kind of came down, skipped across the pavement a little bit. I put it back in. There you go. This is where I did alt hold, and it came down, came across the ground. Then I flipped it back into stabilized mode, and the throttle worked fine. It did come back up, and I was sort of had a hold of it, but then here where it did another just flip because the ESC on that one arm quit working. It just shocked the daylights out of me. And even though I was still trying to hover it, it kind of headed off towards the buildings, which means there's humans there, which totally flipped me out. I can still handle those things better now. Normally, stabilized mode is stabilized, and it's the lowest mode I can go in. Well, acrobatic mode would be lower, but I don't even have that one programmed. That's fully manual. There's no sense in doing that nowadays. Even the most minimum KK2 board has gyros in it. No sense in not using the gyros to help you. That's crazy. So at this point right here is where I flipped it into return to launch. Right here, return to launch. And as you can see, instead of returning to launch, it decided to do 2 more flips. It decided to do 2 more flips as it headed for the tree. We'll exit ground mode here. There you go. I guess this wasn't quite a flip. It just rolled over. I'd say the ESC failed. It dropped that side. Or is that a full flip? No, not a full flip. It rocked one way, and then the computer tried to rock it back the other way, and it winged off at about 60 miles an hour with 12-inch props on those motors, and promptly presented itself to the top of this tree, where I eventually found it. So there's your complete explanation for who, how, where, and when. Now, I couldn't solve this problem until I got the physical craft back, because my telemetry cut out about right here. I've got the telemetry only to send back a sample of the data, although it sends back about 170 different points of data each time it sends. I only have it sending every 10 milliseconds. If I had it set to send more rapidly, I would have had more of this path, which I didn't have. But I don't want to waste the CPU cycles on sending back telemetry when telemetry is actually kind of at that data rate, every 10 milliseconds, send back 130 or so different items to be stored locally. That's quite enough. Might even be overkill. So basically, there's my flight that day. Absolutely no fun whatsoever, but a learning experience nonetheless. You pays your money, you takes your chances. It's like Humphrey Bogart said. So, I think everything is quite clear about the event now. Okay, I've gone ahead and sliced this ESC so we can take the shrink wrap off of it. Just throw that aside. There's your hot input, your ground input, and your input to the RC receiver controller board. And these are the 3 outputs to the motor. And that one right there feels funny. Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to be able to show how it feels funny, but it doesn't feel like a cold solder joint. It just feels strange. Got a nice big heat sink on top of it. This right here is the actual chip that controls everything, and if you want to flash this with Simon K, there's a socket adapter goes down on all those pins on that chip so that you can program it. Yeah, it's not a cold solder joint. Kind of feels like it's popping. Wait a minute. I think I know what's wrong. Get a little closer view here. If you pull on that one wire, you'll notice that the insulation pulls out. Oh, come on, focus. There we go. The insulation pulls and the wire doesn't. See that? It's broken. Oops. Pulled a little too hard. All I actually did is pull the insulation off that end. Now we know the truth. That was probably broken in an altercation with a previous object.